Welcome to the President's Forum podcast, where we explore innovation in higher education. As we're prone to do, today we're going to focus on working learners, specifically learners who serve in the U.S. Armed Forces. We'll be joined by Meg O'Grady, who serves as Senior Vice President of Military and Government Programs at National University. She has over 25 years of experience in serving the men and women who protect our country. She's also a nationally recognized expert in creating employment, transition, education, and outreach programs that engage the military community. Let's get right to our interview with Meg. Great to have you on the show today, Meg. Thanks for joining.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
You bet. Well, I'm interested in exploring the opinion piece that you authored that was run in the Military Times last week. It's titled, "Improving Military Education Benefits is Crucial for National Security." Just the title enough is worth exploring. But before we get too deep into that piece, I'd first like you to remind our listeners about National University's history and commitment to serving our nation's armed forces. Can you start by telling us about that?
Absolutely. So the military is in our DNA. We are one of the largest nonprofit private universities in the country, and we were founded by a Navy veteran 52 years ago. He was at General Dynamics and saw that many of his service members who were either National Guardsmen, reservists, or just getting out of the military were having a really difficult time completing their college because there wasn't any flexible, adaptable options for them. And so he started National University to serve those interests. And we continue that today with 30% of our students military affiliated in some way, whether active duty, veterans, or military family members.
Yeah. Okay. So you have a lot of experience. The institution has a lot of experience just saying, hey, what do members of the military need to succeed in higher education?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, tell us a little bit about your experience in military affairs. What do you do and why do you do it?
So I am an Army veteran as well as an Army spouse for 23 years. So I moved 17 times in 23 years. And my passion has always been community and education. But moving that many times, you kind of catch as catch can. So I have worked for Fortune 500 companies. I've worked for the Secretary of Defense. I've worked for Secretary of Labor, all on veteran and military family employment and career issues, as well as community issues and quality of life. So that brought me to National University. I had come from the Department of Labor, where I was the National Veterans Employment Manager for the Veteran Employment Training Service. So I had a lot of experience in looking at how we bring service members and their families to the place where they have security with their careers. We know that every single service member is going to transition at some time, whether that's after 3 years of service or after 30 years of service.
Right.
Every service member transitions. And we know that we can make that transition easier by appreciating and giving credit for the education and training that they've been given, as well as working with different employers. So we have 200 employer partners, as well as 200 community college partners that we work with in order to bring our military affiliated students to the right careers at the right time.
Well, your piece, it sounds like your history has culminated in, serving in this capacity that you're serving right now. And you bring a lot of pieces together, right? You're in higher ed and you have this focus on members of the armed services and military and how we serve them. But the title of your piece is Improving Military Education Benefits is Crucial to National Security. So I want to talk national security with you for a second on this. What have you found about the current status of military recruitment, and how does education play into that? How does that impact national security?
Well, we always say, and certainly in my experience, my very first experience with military education benefits was with the MyCAA program for military spouses. And I played an instrumental part in redesigning that program so that all military spouses could take advantage and leverage those benefits. And when we went to talk about military spouse education, what was really important was not saying this is the right thing to do, but recognizing that military spouses, when they had a career that meant something to them and they had the education benefits to get to that career, it made that transition for that service member easier. And more importantly, it made the retention of that service member much better. And
Ah,
so when we look at military benefits, we always say recruiting, retention, and returning. So we want to recruit great individuals, which we're having a really hard time with now. And we're having one of the most challenging times since we've become an all volunteer Army. Not one service except for the Marine Corps has met their recruiting goals. And so we think that by showing that the education can happen while you're in the military, you don't have to choose college or the military, you can get both. And then raising the awareness of those benefits for folks who are considering the military will make a real difference.
right. Okay. So to have the forces that we need in this chaotic world, we've got to have some draws so people will join the military, serve to protect the country. This is a big part of that. Tell us a little bit about the effectiveness of tuition assistance. Does it work to bring people in? Has it worked better at other times? Or, tell us the status right now of that.
Yes, actually, it has always been one of the top three benefits that service members name as their reason for entering the military. And so we know that to be the case. There's been several studies, the latest being a RAND study from, I believe, 2017, that really highlighted that military service members were looking for education benefits from their military service. And when the tuition benefits started about 20 years ago, they started with a certain number of dollars for a credit hour that service members could have. And then they had a certain amount of money that they could spend each year on their education benefits. Right now, those benefits have not been raised since they were instituted 20 years ago. And so we know that they haven't kept up with the cost of education. And in fact, some really popular schools that have worked with the military for decades, like Central Texas College, have recently pulled back because they have so many military members. The tuition assistance is not sustainable for
Right.
them. So
Right.
we look at three things. We want to raise the amount per credit hour
Okay.
for each service member. We want to raise the tuition cap because if we don't raise that cap, then they won't be able to complete as many credits as they want to. And we know that they're rock stars when they move through their school. We want to raise the whole benefit because more folks will take advantage of it. So we need an appropriation raise from Congress. And then we need to, again, raise awareness of the benefits so that our service members really take advantage of those benefits and they have the success they need before they leave the military so that they can continue to serve when they go back to their communities.
Well, I'd imagine that this is not only a win for national security and recruitment efforts, but it's also really great for the workforce to have members of the military that when they transition, they're ready to plug into the private sector and drive business forward.
Absolutely. We know that it's the right thing to do, obviously, to hire veterans and military service members. But what we have found through partners that we work with, like the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Hiring Our Heroes program, is that employers are really understanding the value of military service members. They have a great work ethic. They're very adaptable. We know that they're successful learners because they've been technically learning
Right.
for 3 or 4 years in the military at least. And then we also know that it's good for their bottom line. Their veterans retain at higher rates, they train at quicker rates, and they promote at higher rates as well. So they make really wonderful employees and leaders within those
Yeah,
companies.
that makes total sense. When was the last time we saw an increase for these benefits? I mean, we know that there's so many programs, especially government programs, that they don't keep up with inflation, and we've seen tremendous amounts of inflation recently. Where do our benefits stand in regards to that inflationary impact? When was the last time we saw them increased?
They have not increased for 20 years. And so, because of that, we have had a really hard time in sustaining the programs for military service members. In fact, at National University, we supplement the military tuition assistance so that we can serve our military members.
Okay.
And when we do that, that also takes away dollars from other students who need scholarships and dollars as well. So we want to make sure that it at least keeps up with the cost of education as it is today. And we found through the President's Forum and other partnerships that we have that other schools are saying the same thing. It's more and more difficult to sustain those active duty service members, and that's where we need to help them right when they're in the service so that they can transition successfully when they're done.
Right, right. Well, my last question, and this will wrap this interview. I want to know, what should the institutions that are members of the forum, the President's Forum, how can we work together to solve tuition assistance issues for our nation's protectors?
Well, in fact, we are working right now, not only with members of the President's Forum, but with very large veteran service organizations like the American Legion, to talk to our Congress members and let them know about these benefits. In fact, when this article came out, I've had several people approach me and say, I had no idea that the tuition assistance hasn't been raised in 20 years. And I had no idea that there was a cap, that there was a limit for service members. And so it's really, we want to talk to our congressional members. We want to also talk to the folks who work in DOD. We're working very closely with the Tuition Assistance Office at DOD to understand the issues better for our military service members, and then work with the services tuition assistance offices to find out where are their challenges and how can we best as educators help solve them.
I love it. It sounds like we have, a really good offense moving forward to drive this forward. We're committed to do that. We want to help not only our institutions, but more importantly, the learners that learn there. So in many of our instances in the President's Forum institutions, it is these members of the military who we need to focus on, and we need to figure out how we can flexibly provide them the education that they need. And this is a core issue, to be able to provide those benefits for them. So thank you for coming on today. But more importantly, thanks for the work that you're doing to lead this for the President's Forum, for National University and beyond.
Well, it's certainly my privilege and an honor to be able to serve this community. Thanks so much for having me.
You bet. Thanks, Meg.